Hi, welcome back to my channel, or if you're here for the first time, welcome. I'm Stacey. I am a therapist in private practice in the Jackson, Mississippi area, and this is Ask a Therapist. So our first question today comes from Denver. Denver asks, I recently discovered I have a friend who is bipolar and refuses to take her medication because she doesn't think she needs it. She is an adult. What should I do? This is a really tough situation to be in because, we want the people that we care about to be healthy and happy. And it can be really scary to hear that somebody has a disorder, especially a mental illness, if you're not familiar with it. I don't know if you are or not, but just for our viewers, I'm going to say a little bit about bipolar disorder. There are two different types of bipolar disorder, bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, but they're both characterized by mania. Mania is an elevated mood. So if you've ever had the most exciting day of your life, maybe you found out you got a promotion or your spouse surprised you with this dream trip you've always wanted to go on, imagine that elation plus feeling like nothing can hurt you, like you're practically bulletproof. You have a lot of energy, you have all of these ideas. A lot of people are very creative. That's true of people with bipolar disorder or any mental illness. So their creativity just seems like it floods them, and they have all of these ideas like, I'm gonna paint this picture, I'm going to do this project, I'm gonna write this book. But they also have trouble focusing, and so they start a lot of things but they don't finish them. So maybe they start 3 different paintings, but they can't finish one. Or they start writing a book, but they move on to a poem, and then they want to start a blog. And so they've got all of these great ideas, but they just can't focus that energy into the idea. Oftentimes the person might not need as much sleep because they have all of this energy. So maybe they're not sleeping for several days, or they are maybe sleeping just 2 hours a night, but they have more energy than they've ever had, it seems like, ever before. And they're feeling great. It's awesome. It's wonderful. Yeah. Then they crash. So suddenly they're depressed. And that's usually the point where they come into contact with a therapist or counselor, or sometimes end up in the hospital. And the depression that comes along with bipolar disorder is exactly the same symptoms as any other type of depression. So a lot of times people get misdiagnosed because when they come to see a professional, they're coming because of the depression, not because of the mania, because the mania feels great. It's almost like being on what I imagine being on drugs would be like ecstasy or something. So they don't come to see a professional when they're having those symptoms because that is good in their eyes. But when we find that somebody does have symptoms of mania, they'll be diagnosed with bipolar 1 or 2. The difference with bipolar 2 is that it's sort of low-grade mania, what they call hypomania. So they may have an elevated mood or feel extra creative, but they maybe don't make the impulsive decisions. Like they may have the idea of like, oh, I want to go to Coachella even though I live in New York State, so I'm going to just charge this all on my credit card and think about it later. But they're able to stop themselves and be like, wait, that's probably not a good idea. Whereas somebody who is just in mania will probably get that idea, charge the tickets, put a hotel on their credit card, maybe not show up for work, fly to California, and do this like crazy idea. And while it's fun in theory, it really messes up your life. So hypomania is not as elevated as mania, but either one of those are bipolar disorder, or what they used to call manic depression back in the day. One of the problems with bipolar disorder as it affects relationships is that impulsivity can cause people to make some really bad decisions. They may end up damaging their finances. They may end up cheating on a partner. They might end up, going on a trip and not telling anybody, disappearing. And that can be really scary for friends and family members and loved ones. Unfortunately, when someone is an adult, if they're not a danger to themselves, there is no way to get them involuntary help. So you can talk to your friend, you can say that you're concerned. It's best if you do this when they're not manic, because they're not going to be able to focus. And it's also best to have specific reasons why you're concerned. It can't just be, oh, you're not on medication and you have bipolar disorder and that concerns me. Okay, well, why? You have any reasons for this? So, it's helpful if you can say I noticed that you called in sick to work 3 days last week and you started painting your guest room, but you didn't finish it. So specific reasons that you're concerned, and ask them if they will see a therapist or a psychiatrist. Hopefully they already have one, but maybe they don't. But then if they're not willing to do that, you have two choices. You can accept them how they are and who they are and hope that they think about what you said and decide to get help, or you can stop being friends with them. That's all you got. Because if they're not hurting themselves, there's no reason for them to go to the hospital. And to be involuntarily committed to a hospital, you have to be ordered by a judge. So it's a whole process in civil court. It's called court commitment, where you're committed to a hospital. And a judge is not going to care if you are just concerned about them. And also, you do need to be a family member in order to do that. A family member would have to do that court commitment process. And then a judge has to say, yes, this person needs to go to the hospital, and then they order it. The best thing to do is to support your friend no matter what they choose, and let them know that you're there if they need you. Set some strong boundaries. If necessary, say, I'm here if you need me, but I'm not available at 2 a.m. Or, unfortunately, it may be a situation where you have to take a step back from that friendship, and that's really sad. But as an adult, they can make their own choices, and so can you. But what you can't do is make their choices for them. So it's their right to not take medication. It's their right to not seek treatment, even if it is messing up their life. So just like you probably wouldn't want your friend to make decisions for you, you can't make decisions for them either. All you can do is present the reasons that you're concerned and ask them to do something about it, and respect whatever decision they make. It's a tough situation to be in, but I hope that you have the opportunity to talk to your friend, that they listen to you, and hopefully they get the help that they need. So the next question comes from Charles. Charles asks, how can we help people learn to have a civilized debate instead of screaming and name calling? Ooh, tough questions today. So first off, it depends on what you mean by people, okay? So if you're talking about people on the internet that get in debates over politics or differences of opinions, you can't help them have a more civil debate, and you just need to learn to let it go. If you're talking about family members who have differences of opinions and get into debates with you where they're name calling and acting childlike, You can't change them, and you need to let it go and probably stay away from them. Or if you have to go to functions where they are, just avoid having conversations with them, or get up if the conversation turns political. Now, hopefully that's not what you're talking about. So we're talking about having a civilized debate, not screaming or name calling. So if you're talking about in an intimate relationship, like your spouse, your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, you might be able to get them to see the light, maybe not. So the first thing that you need to know about screaming and name calling is that we learn how to communicate from our families of origin. So that's not to go down the road and say you're messed up because of your family, there's nothing you can do about it. What that means is we learn how to be humans and adults from the people that surrounded us growing up. So if your family of origin never talked about problems, there was an unspoken message of, forget about it, this never happened, and everybody is invested in that denial, you're probably going to be somebody who becomes an adult who has an attitude of forget about it, nothing happened, let's never talk about it again. Similarly, if your family of origin had loud screaming fights, then you probably have loud screaming fights as an adult. And unfortunately, patterns of psychological and emotional abuse like blaming, name calling are not okay, but they're also things that we learn are okay because of how our parents treated us, because we saw how our parents treated each other. So while it's not okay, it's normal. I hate to be using air quotes all the time in this session, but it's I don't like the word normal, but that's what the norm is for you. So you don't necessarily see anything wrong with it because it's what you know. And oftentimes the screamer gets involved with the passive person or the denial person for some reason. And when they come together in a relationship, it is not a good mix, because the angry person is angry and the avoiding person avoids, and the angry person follows the avoiding person, and it's just a whole thing. So the first thing that you need to do if you are the person that doesn't scream and name call is set a strong boundary. Name calling is not okay. That is psychological and emotional abuse. So if somebody's calling you stupid, if somebody's calling you whatever, you're stupid, you're ugly, you always mess up, why can you never do a good enough job? Why do you always do this? Why do you never do that? You're just like your dad who you don't have a good relationship with, whatever. That's not okay. So what you have to do is set a boundary. The next time you are called a name, you stop and you say, it's not okay for you to say that to me. There's a saying that I've known for a while, and I can't remember where I saw it for the first time, but it is that we teach people how to treat us. And we do that by setting boundaries or accepting this type of disrespect. So by accepting disrespect from an intimate partner, you have taught them unspokenly that it's okay to disrespect you. So if you want that to change, you have to set a boundary. Now, if you're in an abusive relationship that is physically abusive, you probably need to leave. You may need to get help, because when you set a boundary with somebody who's physically abusive, you put yourself at risk. So if you or your children are at risk, you need to get help. I'm going to put the National Domestic Violence Helpline and some other resources in the comment box, the description box, down below. So know that going in, if you try to set a boundary with somebody that's violent, it may end up being dangerous and you may end up getting hurt. So the best way to protect yourself with somebody who's physically violent is to get out of that situation. And then you can try to mend the relationship if you wish in a safe environment like couples counseling, but it's too dangerous to confront somebody that's physically violent with you in the moment like that. If it's somebody that's just, air quotes, just psychologically and emotionally abusive, it's dangerous to you emotionally but not physically. So you set a boundary and you see how that person reacts. Now, if they're somebody that feeds on rage, they're probably going to get angrier and say, what do you mean I can't talk to you like that? I'll talk to you however I want. And that's when you get up and you walk away. Don't sit there and let a person call you names and emotionally abuse you. Now, that's the reason I preface this by saying if it's somebody that's physically violent, you need to get out. Because if it's somebody that it escalates to physical violence from psychological abuse, then when you get up and walk away, they may end up hurting you physically. But if they're not somebody that's physically violent who you're not afraid of, once they violate that boundary, you have to have a consequence for that. So in this situation, removing yourself when somebody violates the boundary is the best way to reinforce it. You can say something like, I want to finish this discussion with you, but I won't be called names. So I'm going to leave and go to my friend's house or go for a drive to clear my head or go into the other room and spend some time on Facebook or playing a game on my phone. And when you're ready to have a civil discussion about this, let me know and we can finish this. But I won't be spoken to like that. The end. The thing with boundaries is that when we set them with people who aren't used to them, they will push those boundaries, almost like a child. You know, when you tell a child don't do something, what do? They usually see how close to getting away with it they can. So you say, don't play in the street. What do? They get right up next to the street. They might put their toe on the street and see if you're looking because they're seeing, like, can I push these boundaries? How far can I push these boundaries? By being civil yourself, explaining that you won't be talked to like that, explaining that you are willing to finish the discussion when they can be civil, and explaining where you can be found when they're ready to have a civil discussion is appropriate boundary setting. You're not just getting up and walking away, but you're letting them know that I'm walking away from the name calling, but not from resolving the situation. Because most of the time, you know, we do have a situation that has led to a fight that needs to be resolved. So if you just get up and walk away and you don't say anything, that's going to escalate the situation. Now, when I work with couples, I have rules that I talk about for arguments, and one of the things is that you're not going to follow somebody and yell at them. If somebody gets up and walks away, they need to say when you're coming back to the discussion, and you cannot follow them because it's a respect thing. It's a boundaries thing. All healthy relationships need boundaries. If a person cares about you and loves you, they will respect your boundaries. It may be difficult at first because you're changing a pattern of behavior that has probably gone on for some time. So you have to give them the opportunity to mess up, but still keep the consequences of those boundaries. So getting up and walking away is the consequence of name calling once you say, you can't talk to me like that. Now, if they refuse to try, if they refuse to respect your boundaries, you need to decide whether or not you're willing to stay in this relationship while you're being treated this way. Because if they're unwilling to change, the only options are you accept the emotional and psychological abuse, or you end the relationship. You can't make them change. I just wrote a blog post a couple weeks ago on how to change somebody that you might be interested in if you find that you want to change somebody who's not interested in changing. I'll also put a link to that in the description box down below. Both people are in the relationship. Both people are responsible for being healthy. Both people are responsible when things get out of control. You're either responsible because you haven't set boundaries, you haven't reinforced boundaries, or you are also contributing to the dysfunction in some way. So if you find that in an intimate relationship, the other person can't be civil and does name calling and other emotional and psychological abuse, I suggest that you find a couples counselor or therapist in your area and you go to some sessions so that you can have a guide through this process, because it can be really difficult to change patterns of behavior. But like I said in the beginning, if you're talking about people who fight on Facebook or Twitter, that argue about politics, who have different beliefs about how people should be, don't waste your energy. Let those people tell people on Twitter whatever they want to tell them. And if you're the one who has toxicity directed at you, then you can block people, you can disengage from debates. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Ask a Therapist. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you liked this, I hope that you will subscribe and like this video, leave a comment, and if you're interested in submitting a question, you can email me, AskStacey at StaceyAldridgeLCSW.com. So that's the episode for this week. Remember, be kind to yourself today and be kind to other people too. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.